Being forthcoming is to say,
I'm sorry.
You know what, investigators, Congress who's investigating this.
Will you let him answer the question?
I didn't ask him a question.
Yes, you did.
Well, outrage growing over a huge bombshell in the IRS targeting scandal. The top tax official back in the hot seat on Capitol Hill yesterday after reports the agency lost more than 2 years of critical emails sent by Lois Lerner and 7 other employees involved in the investigation because, now get this, their computers crashed. Now, it wasn't long ago that we were told a very different story.
We can find Lois Lerner's emails.
We're committed to reviewing every one of Lois Lerner's emails.
First, they had all the emails. Now they don't. Is this proof that the most feared government agency is involved in a major cover-up? Hi, everybody. I'm David Aslan. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Mike Ozanian, Elizabeth McDonald, Sabrina Schaefer, Rick Unger, and John Tamny. Steve, is it too early to say cover-up?
It is a big cover-up. This is the biggest political scandal in American history, bigger than the Teapot Dome scandals of the early 1920s, bigger than the Watergate scandals of the 1970s. The idea that these computers suddenly crashed is preposterous. Here's another scandal, David, is the major media outside of Fox has been studiously ignoring this thing. So what you're going to get is a push, 1, for tax simplification, and 2, either a select committee in Congress or a special prosecutor to finally get to the bottom of this effort to intimidate ordinary American citizens, not just major opposition leaders.
Well, and that's the thing. It's such a feared agency. Everybody's afraid of this agency. But, Rick, I'm not an IT expert. I'll admit that happily. But I've had my computer crash a couple of times. I've never lost emails. I've called the IT department. They say when a computer crashes, you usually don't lose emails. All 8 officials, all of whom are of interest in this case, computers crash, lost the emails. Coincidence?
I think it's far more coincidental that 8 computers crash. What'd they do? Take them to a football game picnic? And just, I mean, it's getting to be silly. Let's be honest. Look, here's the worst of this. The fact is that if you accept what the government's had to say on all of these things is true, it gets worse and worse and worse. That 8 computers crashed, come on, folks. And if they did crash, we all know IT experts who know very well that they can draw anything out of it. Then they're supposed to be keeping all of this data as backups, right, and they tell us that they only had 6 months worth of storage on tape. Guess what? I can't go to the IRS and say that I only have to keep mine for 6 months because the law says I've got to keep it for 5 to 7 years. No matter what they say, you come down with the following conclusion, and it's inescapable. This is either on purpose, it's intentionally misleading, or we have the most inept IRS that one can imagine, and maybe we shouldn't be so afraid of them.
Well, and EMAC, what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander, as Rick points out, and I think that's a brilliant point. However, I would say this isn't a silly thing. I would say this is a very scary thing. The obstruction of justice by the agency that collects all of our national treasure is a very scary situation.
Yeah, it is extremely scary. And, this is what's going on is this isn't about corrupt money pouring into the electoral system, Citizens United SCOTUS decision there. This is about stifling the opposition during a presidential election or re-election. Yep. So, and it also gave agency to the media backers of the administration who kept saying there is no there to the IRS story as the IRS stalled for months in giving over these emails. I mean, the IRS Commissioner testified in March that the emails do exist on servers at the IRS. If the private sector tried this, they could face 20 years in prison, an executive could, under Sarbox. They have to keep their emails for 5 years. Those emails are there somewhere. It came at a time when 9 Democrat senators are pressuring the IRS to go after and shut down conservative nonprofits, and also getting the DOJ to prosecute.
Right. At the IRS, when you send an email to somebody, it passes through 3 separate servers. Somewhere, one of those servers have it, plus the recipient has it. But Sabrina, there's another cover-up going on here, and Steve alluded to it. It's a cover-up of the media. The media are not reporting on this, and that perhaps is one of the reasons why the public isn't more outraged by it.
No, you're so right, David and Steve. I mean, look, no one believes that the computer ate my email. The problem is the public isn't even hearing that, right? I said at the end of 2013 that one of the biggest scandals of the year was the media's complicitness in aiding these scandals, from Benghazi to the NSA wiretapping to the IRS. This is a serious problem. I mean, where are the hard-hitting questions? Where is hey, what's the timeline? What was lost? Who lost things? What did those emails say in them? There has been absolutely no attempt at actually investigating what actually happened. And I think that's one of the sort of telltale signs of a real cover-up.
And John Tamny, the timing is critical here. 2009 to 2011. That's exactly the time when the Tea Party was gaining the most traction, leading into the 2010 elections. We saw what much of a force they were in the 2010 elections. That's the time period during which these emails are lost. Again, coincidence?
Oh, it's so obvious that it's a cover-up, and we all know why intimately. We know that when we write op-eds, that when we send emails, those are forever. And it's the idea that an IRS that can meticulously track our earnings and catch little mistakes somehow could lose voluminous emails that are very important to the investigation is laughable, and this needs to be investigated thoroughly.
So, Mike, there's either perjury, because at first they said they got all the emails even after they knew that some of these computers crashed, or it's obstruction of justice. Either way, there's a crime here.
I look at the bright side of this, David, which is that here is the poster child of big government, the Obama administration. And what have we had? Besides these lost emails, we've had the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, say that when she was there, she wasn't in charge of security at Benghazi. We had the president lie for months about Obamacare, saying you can keep your doctor if you want your doctor. We've had the Attorney General Holder say about the gun running down in Mexico, he was held in contempt. So big government, not just these emails and servers and computers have crashed, the whole notion of big government has crashed.
Steve, about 40 years ago, there was a secretary named Rosemary Woods. She worked for then-President Richard Nixon. There was this taping error that happened during which there was this gap, a critical gap. Congress was interested in getting information about Nixon, his role in a cover-up. That gap prevented some of that information. Eventually, the president had to resign as a result of all that. Could this lead to that?
Well, that 18-and-a-half-minute erasure, it was fun to see her in that hearing, Rosemary Woods, the Nixon secretary, try to describe how it happened, these voluminous hours of tape. It did bring down the president. I'm not sure it's going to bring down this president for a variety of reasons, but the fact of the matter is it's going to bring down the Democratic Party. You're going to start to see it in November, and it's going to discredit, as has been pointed out by Mike, it's discredit the idea of big government. So it's going to be huge, and this thing's only going to grow.
If the public is aware of it, and Rick, I listened to NPR yesterday. You say that the media is reporting on it. We obviously are right here. I listened to NPR for an hour and a half, not one word on the day the IRS commissioner was giving testimony, not one word in an hour and a half about that testimony. Well, it's critical, and NPR is not reporting on it.
Yeah,
and we're paying them.
I agree. If they didn't report on it, that's shocking. I'm certainly reporting on it on my radio show. I don't know why they aren't. But I do have to say this. I think Steve undermines his case, which would otherwise be a good one, when he kind of overstates it. This isn't going to bring down the Democratic Party. It's not Watergate. I'm told that Nixon was actually reading love. He was reading poetry to his wife on that 8.5 minutes. Look, this is no good. Let's be realistic.
Is this worse, not worse? Does it compare at all to Watergate?
In the Friday column, Kimberly Strauss from the Wall Street Journal made the basic point. Watergate was about hitting the leaders of another opposition party, big shots. Roosevelt going after big shots in the 1930s like Andrew Mellon. This is going after ordinary American citizens trying to participate in the public square, and it involves
who were talking about government,
the White House.
who were talking about big government spending. And by the way, Rick Unger, you for months were saying there was no there there. We need a special prosecutor like Leon Jaworski who went after Nixon.
In Rick's fairness, he is now saying there is there.
Finally.
There.